Have you ever fallen into this feeling? You work hard, you save, you gather every dollar, then when you step into investing, you feel like you're lost in a vast forest. Everyone points you to a different path. Every piece of advice leads in a different direction. One person says, just spread it out for safety. Another says, just try, maybe you'll hit something. And you stand there hopeful yet confused. I once knew a man like that. In 2 years, he invested in 9 different places. 9 places, none of which he truly understood. He believed the wider he spread, the safer he would be. But he forgot one very simple truth. A seed doesn't need to be scattered across an entire field. It only needs to be planted in the right soil. And then his investments began to fall apart, one by one. Not because the market was terrible, but because he never had the discipline to understand what he was doing. When I met him again, the excitement he once had was gone, replaced by the exhaustion of someone who had let luck guide him for far too long. That moment made me realize a truth I want to share with you today. Diversification is not spreading money. Diversification is spreading understanding. Financial success doesn't come from how many options you have, but from how many of them you truly understand. And discipline, not haste, is what grows wealth sustainably. In today's video, I'll share with you 7 principles that will help you diversify correctly, build a safe yet strongly growing asset system. These principles won't just change how you invest, they might change how you see your entire life. And you should stay until the end of the video, because principle number 7 is the key that could open a completely new direction for your financial future. Now, let's begin this journey together. Principle 1, diversification is not spreading money, it's spreading understanding. I've met many people who failed in investing, but there's one story I still remember vividly because it's the clearest reflection of how dangerous wrong diversification can be. He was a hard-working man, steady for more than 10 years. He saved well, lived responsibly, and always believed, just spread wide and you'll be safe. So within 2 years, he put money into 9 different places. 9 places which sounded solid, sounded smart, sounded well prepared. But there was one thing he never did: sit down and ask himself whether he understood any of those places. And then, piece by piece, his wealth began to fall apart. Not because the market was particularly bad, not because he lacked luck, not because the world was against him. He lost money for one reason. He spread money when he should have spread understanding. You see, many people think diversification means dividing things into as many parts as possible. But real diversification is not an action, it's a mindset. It begins with the question, do I understand where I'm putting my money? Not, have I spread wide enough? I still remember the last time I saw him after 2 years of spreading his assets thin. His face had no light left. He told me, Jim, I don't understand why I lost so much. I spread everything carefully, I listened to every piece of advice, but somehow I still did it wrong. I put my hand on his shoulder and told him something he later said was the most important thing he learned. You can spread money, but you cannot spread ignorance. Because when ignorance is spread, it doesn't disappear, it multiplies. Diversifying without understanding is like planting seeds in 10 plots of land you know nothing about. 1 might be fertile, 3 may be slightly dry, 4 may be barren, 2 may be infested, and you have no idea which seeds are living and which are dying. You just sit there hoping luck is on your side. But luck has never been a strategy. Luck is only a reward for those with wisdom and discipline. Have you ever noticed? People with sustainable wealth never say, just invest randomly, let's try and see, or just spread to be safe. They look at assets the way farmers look at their crops. They know which soil is fertile. They know the right timing. They know which seed needs sun, which needs shade. And most importantly, they don't plant so many things that they can't care for any of them. Proper diversification is not planting more. Proper diversification is knowing where you plant. A person with 3 investments they understand deeply will always be stronger than someone with 9 investments they only heard people talk about. Because 3 things you understand bring peace. 9 things you don't control bring 1,000 worries. I once fell into this trap when I was young. I thought the wider I spread, the less risk I carried. But in reality, I was only dividing my lack of experience into many parts, and that inexperience ruined everything, just not all at once. That is why the first principle of disciplined diversification is spread your understanding first, then spread your money. Because money doesn't protect you. Understanding protects you. Ask yourself, if I had to explain to a child how this asset works, could I do it? If the answer is no, you're not ready to put money in it. A wise person only needs a few right opportunities to become wealthy. An ignorant person can have 10 wrong opportunities and lose everything. And that's only the first principle. Because to diversify correctly, you not only need to understand what you're planting, you must understand the true nature of diversification. Principle 2, understand the true nature of diversification. Many people hear the word diversification and immediately think that the more they divide, the safer they are. But that's a dangerous illusion. If Principle 1 warns you about spreading money without spreading understanding, then Principle 2 is the foundation for understanding what diversification truly is. I once spoke with a young man full of enthusiasm. He told me he had invested in 4 places: a friend's small shop, some gold, a portion given to an acquaintance for business, and the rest into a fund he couldn't even remember the details of. He looked at me confidently and said, "Jim, I'm diversifying, right?" I looked at him and asked, "Do you understand how that shop operates?" He shook his head. "Do you understand why gold rises and falls?" He shook his head again. "And the money you gave your acquaintance, do you know how they manage it?" He fell silent. Diversification is not dividing your money into many pieces. It is dividing your risk by understanding each place where you put your trust. If you don't understand it, then your risk doesn't shrink. It multiplies. Because now you don't just have one thing you don't understand, you have 4. I've seen many people think they're safe because they have multiple investments. But it's like owning 4 boats all leaking. One leaking boat is enough to sink you. 4 leaking boats just sink you faster. Diversification only has meaning when each component has logic, purpose, and enough depth of understanding for you to control it. Otherwise, you're just dividing your confusion. I once met an older man who had gone bankrupt before. He told me, "Jim, I used to think diversification meant buying everything that seemed to have a future, but in reality, I was just collecting things I didn't understand. I wasn't diversifying, I was drawing lots." And then he said something profound. People don't fail because they lack opportunities. People fail because they can't distinguish between an opportunity and a trap. You know, the market doesn't sink anyone. Their lack of clarity does. One of the biggest misconceptions is, the wider, the safer. Not true. Wide without understanding equals diluted strength. When you understand deeply enough, you only need a few pillars to stand strong for life. Imagine you're holding a bundle of torches. If the flames are split into too many points, the light weakens, the warmth weakens. When you gather them into a few focused points, the light grows stronger, the heat grows stronger. That's what proper diversification is like. Few but focused, wide but not diluted, safe yet effective. You cannot control too many things at once. No one can. A wise person doesn't try to increase the number of assets they own. They try to increase the quality of their understanding of those assets. And here's where young people often make a mistake. They think diversification is the map to wealth. It is not. Diversification only protects those who already have principles. Those without principles will ruin any strategy, no matter how brilliant it is. I once asked an old mentor, "How do you know you're diversifying correctly?" He replied very slowly, "When every dollar you have has a reason to be exactly where it is. Not because someone praised it, not because you saw others doing it, not because you fear missing out, but because you understand the mechanism, the risk, the flow, and you accept it with wisdom, not emotion. When you understand correctly, you'll see that diversification is not a game of collecting, it's a game of selecting. Choosing fewer, but choosing better. Choosing what you can use, not what makes you look smart. And to understand why so many people diversify yet still fail, you need to look at 4 types of investors, 3 of whom walk toward disaster, and only 1 who walks toward freedom. Principle 3, 4 types of investors, 3 wrong, 1 right. When it comes to diversification and building assets, I used to believe that just having many investments was enough to be safe. But the more I talked with people, the more I listened to stories of success and failure, the more I saw a very clear truth. It's not the assets that decide the result. It's the type of person behind those assets. Across thousands of conversations, I realized every investor falls into 4 types. 3 lead to stress, regret, and sometimes irreversible loss. Only 1 truly leads to peace and lasting wealth. And the important thing is, no one is born as the right type. People become it. 1. The emotional investor. I once met a young woman after a talk. She told me that every time she heard someone mention a big opportunity, her heart would beat fast and she would immediately put money into it. She called it intuition. I call it untrained emotion. The emotional investor is like someone who sails based on the color of the sky. When the sky is blue, they happily row forward. When it turns gray, they panic and turn back. And they never really know where they are, much less where they are going. Emotions are wonderful in love, in art, in life. But in investing, emotions are not a map. They are fog. And people walking in the fog always misjudge everything. 2, the crowd follower. There are people who believe that if many people do it, it must be right. I once met a group of young men who opened a fast food shop just because they saw other shops were crowded. They didn't understand the recipe, didn't understand the cost, didn't understand cash flow, didn't understand anything about that industry. But they believed crowded means profit. 3 months later, they closed. Not because they were lazy, but because they never knew what they were stepping into. The crowd follower doesn't choose with wisdom, they choose with volume. Whatever is talked about the most, they believe is the most correct. But the crowd doesn't lead to freedom. The crowd only leads to where the crowd is going. And you already know, most people don't get rich. 3, the all-in gambler. The one who believes in a single life-changing bet. This is the most interesting type of person I've ever met. They love once-in-a-lifetime stories. They believe in luck more than in models. They believe in a single big move more than in long-term strategy. I once knew a man who put all his savings into opening a shop he had never run, never worked in, never researched. He just said, "Jim, I want to try once and see." But wealth is not a gamble, and the future is not a game of chance. Risk-taking doesn't turn mistakes into victories. It only makes the mistakes bigger. 4. And finally, the disciplined investor, the rarest type, but also the type that always wins in the long run. The disciplined investor doesn't follow emotions, doesn't follow the crowd, doesn't go all in to prove anything. They learn first, they understand first, then they put money in. I once knew an old man in the southern United States. He only invested in 3 areas for decades, just 3. But he understood them so deeply that when volatility hit, he knew exactly what was happening and why. He told me, "Jim, I don't need to know a lot. I just need to know that what I have lies within the reach of my understanding." People like him don't get rich fast, but they get rich solidly. Their wealth is not built on luck, but on structure. You cannot diversify correctly if you don't know which type you are. If you invest with emotion, your money moves with your mood. If you invest with the crowd, your future belongs to other people's choices. If you go all in, you gamble your time and sweat on luck. But if you are disciplined, you turn your assets into a mighty tree. And discipline is the only thing the storm cannot sweep away. The question for you, what type of investor are you today? And what type do you want to become in the next 5 years? And you know, discipline is only the first step. A disciplined person still needs a strong enough system to protect them. Just like a tree needs roots, trunk, and canopy to withstand strong winds. Principle 4, the 3-layer asset system, roots, trunk, fruit. When I first started seriously learning about assets, one image changed the way I saw the world. A tree standing firm in a storm. I always ask myself, what keeps it standing? Not the leaves, not the ripe fruit, not even the tall trunk. What keeps it standing is the roots. The deeper I went on the financial journey, the more I realized assets are like a tree. They need roots to survive, a trunk to grow, and fruit to generate returns. But many people do the opposite. They rush toward fruit, things that seem highly profitable before building roots. And when there are no roots, everything they have can be lost in a single gust of wind. I once met an older man in the West. He lost almost all his savings because he put everything into an investment that sounded impossible to lose. When the crisis hit, his life was like a boat without an anchor, drifting who knows where. He told me, "Jim, I should have built roots first, not fruit." Roots are the things that keep you alive in difficult times. Roots are stability. Roots are safe, simple, easy to understand assets, the kind that when storms come, you know you can still stand. Roots don't make you rich, but roots keep you from becoming poor. And that's what many people forget. When the roots are solid, the tree begins to grow a trunk, the part that determines the strength of the entire system. I once knew a man who only invested in 2 areas for 20 years. Not flashy, not hot, not trending, but they were stable, durable, and generated steady cash flow. That was his trunk. The trunk doesn't grow loudly. The trunk doesn't give you fruit immediately. But the trunk feeds the leaves, holds the canopy, and prepares for fruit. The trunk is made of assets that grow steadily, not too risky, not too safe, but the ones that take you the farthest. And you know what? Many people don't become poor because they lack fruit, but because they never build a trunk. Without a trunk, everything collapses. When a tree has deep roots and a strong trunk, fruit becomes natural. But many people do the opposite. They plant types of trees only for fruit, without building roots and without caring for the trunk. And then they wonder why the fruit falls, the tree dies, and the assets vanish. Fruit represents assets with higher growth potential, but only for those who already have a foundation. They are a reward, not a lifeline. Those without roots need fruit to survive. But those with roots see fruit as an extra path forward. Someone with 3 layers of assets, roots to stand firm, trunk to grow, fruit to accelerate, will always have more secure wealth than someone who only chases returns. A strong tree is not strong because it has many fruits, but because it has deep roots. A tall tree is not tall because it wants to be tall, but because it has a solid trunk. A tree that bears good fruit doesn't do so because it tries hard, but because it's cared for the right way. Proper diversification is not many places to make money, but many layers to protect, develop, and grow. Those 3 layers together create peace, something money alone cannot give you. Ask yourself, which layer are your assets in today? Do you have roots, or are you just chasing fruit? And interestingly, not everyone knows how to tend this 3-layer system, because tending assets is like tending a garden. You can't tend to 10 types of plants at once. You can only tend to what you understand, what you have the time and wisdom to nurture. Principle 5, the gardener's lesson. Less, but care better. Many years ago, on a short trip to the suburbs of Northern California, I met an old gardener. His garden wasn't large. It wasn't flashy, didn't have rare plants, nothing particularly surprising, but it was the healthiest garden I had ever seen. Green leaves, soft soil, upright trees, and no signs of careless tending. I asked him for his secret. He just smiled and said a sentence I've carried with me for years after. People aren't poor because they lack land. People are poor because they plant too many things they can't take care of. That sentence left me standing in silence, and it was also the greatest lesson about assets I've ever received. Young people, especially those just starting to build wealth, often tend to want more. More sectors, more investments, more opportunities, more sweet fruit. They fear missing out, fear being slower than others, fear falling behind. But they forget what gardeners know best. You can only care for as many plants as you have the time and understanding to care for. If you sow 10 types of seeds but only care for each a little, you won't have any real harvest. But if you choose 2-3 types, tend them consistently, understand them deeply, do the right things, you'll always have good fruit. The old gardener told me, I only grow 3 types of plants because I only have enough energy to care for 3. Any more and I'll ruin all 3. Does that sound familiar to you? Many people don't fail because they invest in the wrong place. They become poor because they invest in too many places, none of which they care for long enough to let it grow. They sow seeds and then abandon them. They water one day and forget for a month. They keep changing soil because someone said another place was better. They switch plants mid-season because they see others harvesting beautiful fruit. But assets, like plants, don't grow by inspiration. They grow by discipline. A good gardener doesn't just know what plants need. They know the signs of disease. They know when to expose them to more sun, when to reduce water. They know which soil is suitable, which season to plant, which season to rest. A good investor is the same. They don't open a new field just because someone says it's really good. They expand when their understanding is deep enough, and they narrow down when they realize they're spreading themselves too thin. Understanding doesn't come from owning many things. Understanding comes from a long-term relationship with the things you choose to own. I once asked the gardener, why only grow 3 types of plants? You have more land, don't you? He replied, big land with little understanding makes the land useless. I've carried that sentence with me my whole life. It's the same in finance. You don't need many sectors. You just need a few you understand well, can control, and can nurture for many years. Less but deeper creates peace. Less but deeper helps you know exactly where you stand. Less but deeper helps you go far without risking everything when the wind changes. Look back at your life. How many types of plants are you growing? How many sectors are you investing in? And how many of those do you truly understand deeply? If the number you understand deeply is smaller than the number you're investing in, then you're sowing more than you can care for. And plants don't die immediately. They wither slowly. Assets are the same. Ask yourself, among the sectors you're investing in, which 2-3 do you want to nurture for the long term? And interestingly, I once met a man who applied this exact lesson, and he became sustainably wealthy without having to hold too many things. He only chose 3 areas and understood them so deeply that no volatility could make him lose sleep. Principle 6, the story of the man who invested in only 3 fields and became sustainably wealthy. Many years ago, I had the chance to talk with a man living in the central region of the United States. He wasn't a loud millionaire. No one saw him showing off. No one heard him brag about big wins. But when you met him, you could feel something that very few people have, the peace of someone who truly understands his assets. That day we were sitting in his backyard where there was an old wooden chair and a small garden he had tended for 15 years. When we talked about money, about investing, about the volatility of the times, he gently said, "Jim, I only invest in 3 things, just 3. But I understand them well enough to sleep well every night." I asked him why he chose only 3. He smiled, squinted toward the sunlit garden, and said, "Because I don't have enough intellect to understand more than that. And I don't fool myself into thinking I understand what I don't understand." That sentence to me was stronger than any lecture on strategy. He wasn't lacking intelligence. He was wise because he knew the limits of his own understanding. A lot of people don't lose money because they invest in the wrong place. They lose money because they think they're smarter than they really are. They think they can understand 6 fields at the same time. They think they can control every fluctuation. They think the more, the better. But this man chose less but enough, less but deep, less but lasting. He shared that each field he chose had a reason. One field I've understood since I was young, because I worked in that industry. One field I studied for many years, because I felt it suited me. And one field I joined because it gives me steady cash flow and helps me sleep at night. 3 fields, 3 clear reasons. No emotion, no trend following, no vague persuasion. He said, "Deep understanding is like having a detailed map. Vague understanding is like walking in a forest where you only remember the direction but not the path. When you understand deeply, you know when to stay still, when to add more, when to pull out, and when to let things run on their own own. You don't panic because of volatility. You don't feel terrified when bad news appears. You don't get dragged around by the market like a boat without oars." I asked him his secret for maintaining those 3 areas for decades. He didn't talk about skills. He didn't talk about secret strategies. He talked about just one thing: discipline. "I have a very simple rule," he said. "Every month I spend time reviewing those 3 areas one by one, like checking on 3 children. I see them as a responsibility, a duty, not a game of chance. People fail because they manage their assets based on mood." This old man managed his assets based on a schedule. His discipline wasn't loud. His discipline wasn't flashy. But it was consistent enough to create lasting wealth, the kind of wealth that doesn't get blown away when the wind changes. What impressed me most wasn't how much money he had. It was how he talked about it gently, warmly, without tension. He said, "I don't invest to become rich. I invest so I don't have to be afraid." And that is the biggest difference between those who are sustainably wealthy and those who are briefly rich. Sustainably wealthy people don't chase big profits. They build peace first. Then profits come later as a gift, not the main goal. When you invest in too many fields, your mind is pulled in a dozen directions. When you narrow it down to 2-3 fields, you narrow both your risk and your fear. And fear is what makes many people become poor faster than risk does. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to chase 10 fields. You don't need to become a multi-industry expert. You just need to go deep enough to control your own life. Deep enough to recognize which land is right for you. Deep enough to build roots before you go looking for fruit. Sustainable wealth doesn't come from big numbers. Sustainable wealth comes from clarity. And clarity only comes when you stop expanding and start digging deeper. Ask yourself, today, if you could only choose 3 fields to understand deeply for the next 10 years, what would you choose? And from that story, I realized something more important than anything else. To be safe, you need breadth. To be effective, you need depth. And when those two come together, you have the strongest principle for building sustainable wealth. Principle 7, wide for safety, deep for effectiveness. One afternoon, I was sitting on my porch, watching a neighbor rowing his small boat on the lake nearby. The wind was picking up a little, and the water was rippling. I watched him row and suddenly realized that boat was wider than most boats I'd seen, and the blade of his paddle went very deep into the water. Suddenly, that simple image gave me a big lesson about assets. For a boat not to flip, it needs width. For a boat to go far, the paddle needs depth. It's the same in investing. Wide for safety, deep for effectiveness. That's the final principle and also the summary of everything I've learned over many years observing people and money. I've met many people who rely on just one pillar, one source of income, one single industry, one form of investment. They think that if they're good at one thing, they don't need anything else. But everything in life changes. Even ancient forests shed their leaves. Rivers change course. Markets that seem solid also shake at times. One shift of the wind can make someone who depends on a single pillar lose everything. Breadth in investing is not a large number of assets. Breadth is structure, multiple safe pillars, multiple stable income streams, multiple layers of protection, multiple exits if one path runs into trouble. Breadth helps you not collapse. Breadth helps you not panic. Breadth helps you avoid putting your entire life on one bet. But here's the important part. Breadth without understanding only scatters your strength and increases your fear. If breadth brings safety, then depth brings growth. And the man I talked about in Principle 6, the one who invested in only 3 fields, is the perfect example. He didn't chase 10 opportunities. He didn't run after whatever others said was good. He dug deep into those 3 fields year after year, season after season, like a farmer caring for every inch of his land. When you go deep, you understand the cycle. You understand the risks. You understand how it generates profit. You understand when to be patient and when to take action. Depth turns assets into a system that can run without dragging you around with it. People who never go deep are always worried. Those who do, even if they don't get rich, quickly become sustainably wealthy. If you only have breadth with no depth, you are scattered. If you only have depth with no breadth, you are reckless, like a boat. A wide boat with shallow paddling, you're safe, but you stay in place. A narrow boat with deep paddling, you go fast, but you're easy to flip. Only when the boat is wide and the paddle goes deep can you be both safe and go far. That's the foundation of sustainable wealth. Many safe bases, plus a few deep fields. You don't need many fields. You just need a few roots to keep you standing firm, one trunk to nourish your assets, a few fruits to accelerate when the time is right. That's a structure no one can take from you. No one can tear down because it's built on your wisdom, not your luck. I once asked an older mentor, what makes sustainably wealthy people different from those who are only briefly rich? He didn't talk about opportunity. He didn't talk about strategy. He just said one sentence. Sustainably wealthy people know what to scale wide and what to dig deep. Discipline isn't about doing many things. Discipline is about not doing too many things. Discipline is knowing when to stop before you get scattered. Discipline is digging deep before you expand. Look back at your life. Where are you wide? Where are you deep? Are you scattering yourself because you want to feel safe? Are you being reckless because you want to be effective? You need both. Wide so you don't collapse. Deep so you don't stand still. Ask yourself, if you had to choose 2 pillars to dig deep into and 2 pillars to keep wide, what would you choose for the next 5 years? And when you understand the balance between wide and deep, you've grasped the final key to the whole journey of disciplined diversification. Now it's time to connect everything to see the full picture of building a sustainable asset system. When I look back at the entire journey we've just gone through, from understanding yourself, building a foundation, choosing fields, digging deep, tending carefully, then learning to balance between breadth and depth, I realized that disciplined diversification is not a lesson about money. It's a lesson about people. I've met many who chase assets their whole lives, yet are always anxious. They invest in many things, but understand nothing deeply. They diversify, but lack discipline. And the more they do, the more exhausted they become. Meanwhile, I've also met people who seem ordinary, not loud, not trend chasing, but they know exactly what they're building. They have a solid foundation, deep roots, a strong trunk, fruit in the right season. They are wide enough to stand firm, deep enough to go far, and most importantly, they are at peace. Peace doesn't come from the amount of money in your account. Peace comes from the structure you build to protect yourself. When you know clearly what you understand deeply, you won't be dragged around by the market. When you know what is root, what is trunk, what is fruit, you won't fear volatility anymore. When you know the limits of your own intellect, you stop burning energy on things that aren't meant for you. Disciplined diversification is exactly that. Knowing what to expand and what to narrow. Knowing what to plant and what to let go. If you can do that, your assets will grow with you. And you will grow with your assets. No panic, no following the crowd. No trading away your precious years just to chase short-term numbers. If these lessons resonate with you, please like and subscribe so we can continue together on the journey of building a sustainable foundation for success. Leave a comment. Among the 7 principles today, which one made you think the most? And as I always say, success is not something you chase. It is something you attract by the person you become. I truly appreciate that you stayed until the end of this video. See you again in the next ones.